Trudeau College and listen in.
In the fight against COVID-19, our focus will always be here at home. But this is a global challenge. To keep Canadians safe and restart our economy, we need to defeat this virus not just within our borders, but wherever it will be found. That's how we'll beat COVID-19 for good. So just like we're coordinating our efforts across the country, we're collaborating with allies around the globe, too. Earlier this morning, I joined leaders from other countries and from civil society and industry to work together on accelerating the global development of COVID-19 vaccines, treatments, and testing. We all share a common goal, ending this pandemic. And Canada is stepping up to do its part. Canada's contribution of over $850 million for the global fight against COVID-19 includes investments in Canadian and international research. At home, we're providing funding for everything from the University of Saskatchewan's Vaccine and Infectious Disease Organization for their work on vaccine development to Vancouver-based Abcelera for treatments. Right across the country, we're making sure that Canadians can keep leading. Our $850 million commitment also includes support for vaccine development through the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations and the WHO's Solidarity Trial that helps hospitals share information on treatments. The more we cooperate, the more likely that we find a cure and find it quickly. And that's something we all want to see.
Since the beginning of the crisis, we've been focusing on what's happening at home. We're working hard to ensure the safety of Canadians and support our frontline workers by preparing the relaunching of the economy. COVID-19 is a global challenge that requires global solutions, and everyone has to do his part. Canada's contribution to the world combat against COVID-19 is of $850 million, including investment in research work being done in Canada and elsewhere in the world. It also includes the implementation of a vaccination through the Coalition for Preparation for Pandemics and WHO that favors the exchange of information between hospitals. By working all together on the same issue, we maximize our chances of finding a solution more quickly, and this is what all the countries and all the citizens of the world want.
COVID-19 is an unprecedented challenge, but it's not the first time that Canadians have been called to do their part. Over the past generations, Canadians have time and time again stepped up in defense of our shared future. This week marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands and a Victory in Europe Day. From the fall of 1944 to the spring of '45, thousands of Canadians pushed back the occupying forces, road by road, town by town. They fought, and many died, to defend the values that we hold dear: peace and democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. And today, 75 years later, we remember their courage and their sacrifice. Earlier this morning, I spoke with Mark Rutte, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. We talked about the close, lasting bonds of friendship that exist between our two countries. We talked about how we collaborated together in years past, standing for our values, fighting side by side, and how we're doing that again today in this global crisis, in friendship and in solidarity. So today, I ask all Canadians to join me and our friends and allies in the Netherlands at 2 p.m. Eastern Time to observe 2 minutes of silence in honor of our veterans. As we pause, let's reflect on how each of us can live up to their example. Maybe you'll do your part by staying home to protect our healthcare workers. Maybe you'll bring groceries to an elderly neighbor or make a donation to a food bank, or simply make the effort of sending a postcard to a veteran to thank them for their service. With your actions, you're contributing to your community and demonstrating that Canadians, time and time again, will continue to step up. I know the weather's getting nicer, We still need to be extremely careful, and not just for our seniors, but for everyone around us. So don't go out unless you absolutely have to. And if you do, keep 2 meters apart from each other. Cette semaine marque le 75e
This week marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands and the days of victory in Europe. From fall 1944 to spring 1945, thousands of Canadians pushed back the occupation forces one town at a time. They fought, and many lost their lives, to defend the values that are dear to us. And today, 75 years later, we remember their courage and their sacrifice. At 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Daylight Time, I invite all Canadians to join me to observe 1 minute of silence in honor of our veterans. During these 2 minutes, we can reflect on how we can all follow their example. Maybe you'll do your part by staying home to protect our healthcare workers, by making a donation to a food bank, or by sending a postcard to a veteran to thank him. Each one of us can help our communities, but no matter what you decide to do, please continue to stay home. Keep distance of 2 meters from others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now go to the phone for questions. Just a reminder, 1 question, 1 follow-up. Operator.
Thank you. Merci. First question, Kate Belangaro, Bloomberg, line open.
Hello, Prime Minister. We've heard from Canadian Airlines that the government is studying what is happening elsewhere to help the sector, and they're getting a lot of aid in other countries, and they are direct competitors of the Canadian industry. So I'm wondering, what exactly is your government looking at to help the airline sector beyond the wage subsidy, and why is it taking so long to roll this out?
We have in Canada a very strong airline sector, and we need to continue to have a strong airline sector once this is all done. So, of course, we're looking very carefully at how to support industries like that are so important to Canada and to Canadians. But one of the key things that we were able to do right off the bat, which helped massively in the airline sector and elsewhere, was move forward on the CERB and the wage subsidy. Ensuring that Canadians can continue to keep their jobs even as they stay home, that they continue to have that link to their employers is going to allow our economy to come back stronger and the damage done by this COVID-19 pandemic to be minimized. We will have more to say about sectoral supports in the future. But for now, the support that we've given to workers right across the country is making a very real difference. We know
that we have an extremely strong and we had a strong and competitive airline industry before the pandemic, but we'll have it again after the pandemic. But during the pandemic, it's important to support industry and especially workers, and this is why that we put forward the CERB and the wage subsidy to ensure that people can stay home but still have money for groceries and rent, and also to make sure that when the economy reopens, there will still be jobs. They'll still have their jobs. We'll have other things to say in moments to come on how we will help, more specifically, the different industries that are hard impacted by this economy, such as the airline industry. But for the time being, the wage subsidy and the CERB do a great job of helping Canadians across the country.
So I have a very quick question regarding the Bank of Canada nomination. You've been committed to more equality and diversity across government positions. Why did your government decide to follow the same model by nominating another English-speaking man to the role instead of a Francophone or a woman?
We were fortunate in this country to have many extraordinary people qualified to head up the Bank of Canada, and we made the determination on who would be the best to see us through this difficult time and 7 years into the future as well. And I know that Tiff Macklin will do just that.
We had a process to follow. We had several candidates of both sexes who were interested in this position, and we made the choice of the best person to help us through this period of crisis and in the years of recovery to come. And Tiff Macklin is certainly that person.
Merci. Prochaine question, moderator.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Laura Osman, the Canadian Press. Line open.
Good morning, Prime Minister. I wanted to ask you about the EU pledge conference this morning. The money pledged by Canada is sort of money that's already been announced. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation estimate it'll take about $20 billion in the long term to roll out a vaccine worldwide. So why is it that Canada is not bringing more money to the table? And has Canada been asked to pledge more in the coming days and weeks?
The pledging conference this morning was a beginning. It was a recognition that many countries are already stepping up in developing research and science towards a global vaccine. Canada has made significant investments, as you've highlighted, in our scientists and researchers who are world-class and who are contributing to finding solutions, not just for Canadians, but for the entire world. It is really important that the world comes together to collaborate, because even once we find a vaccine, whether it's in Canada or elsewhere around the world, we will share that vaccine in its formula. But production of that vaccine will be extremely important right around the world as well. It cannot just be the wealthiest countries producing that vaccine for its citizens, for their citizens. We need to ensure that there are systems in place so that the billions of people around the world who are vulnerable can get these vaccines as well. That's why this takes a global effort, and that's why Canada is so pleased to be able to contribute through what we're doing here at home and investments overseas as well. And there will be more to come as the world grapples with this pandemic. Okay. We
know that we have some of the best scientists in Canada who are doing extraordinary research to find vaccines, but there are worldwide efforts that are needed as well. We are funding with historic funds the research here in Canada to help with this global fight, but we also recognize that it will take a lot of coordination and collaboration globally. And this is why Canada was so proud to participate with $850 million investment mainly here at home, but also for international research to demonstrate that we are part of this global approach to a solution, because everyone needs it.
Thank you. And on the emergency financial benefit, will the current benefit programs be adjusted to account for the slow and gradual return of people to work and the fact that they may return to earning too much income to qualify for benefits, but not enough to sort of get back to where they were and make ends meet and pay the bills?
Laura, I really look forward to facing that challenge of how we start to scale back the benefits and help people get back to work. We're not there yet. We're very much still trying to make sure that people are getting the support they need, even as the economy is starting to gradually reopen. Our focus is on keeping people safe and ensuring that they have the ability to stay home and pay for groceries and pay their rents and support each other. So yes, obviously a lot of thought is going into the various steps that are going to be needed as we get people out of their homes and back to work. But for now, we're still very much focused on how we help people through this.
Thank you. Next question, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Raymond Filion, TVA, à vous.
Hello, Prime Minister. To pursue in the same vein, the wage subsidy program, which is good till June, hardly a month away, do you intend to extend it? Oh, there's all kinds of reflection that we have to have on the next steps to follow. We know that eventually people will go back to work, and in which sectors and regions, and how will we manage this transition between the supports that we're sending to people and the return to work are extremely important questions. But for the time being, we're still focused on the need to help people while the economy is still closed. But all these questions with reopening and gradual return to work will have to be the subject of many discussions with the provinces and the sectors and reflections as a government. Follow-up? You also stated in an interview last night, that looking back, your government could have done differently in managing things. Could you tell us exactly which ones? Certainly. In an unprecedented crisis like this, we're doing the best we can. And we could. Are there things we could have done differently? Certainly. And I know that after, when this is all over, there will be people who will have recommendations. We'll ask for audits. We will look at how to better prepare for the next time. Should there be a next time? But for the time being, my priority is what do I need to do today and tomorrow to help Canadians, to protect people and ensure that we get through this properly. I don't spend a whole lot of time to look in the rearview mirror. I look at what we're doing now and in the weeks to come.
And we'll take one more question on the phone, please. Operator?
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Hélène Buzetti, Le Devoir. À vous.
Yes, Mr. Trudeau. I'd like to go back to Friday's announcement on weapons. There was confusion with regarding to grandfather clause, with regard to illegal weapons. I'd like to know from you, what's your preference? Should there be a grandfather clause? And if you want one, what explanation do you give to leave these weapons in circulation that you have deemed dangerous? This is a very good question. First, our announcement last week was that we were preventing the sale, the purchase, and the use of assault weapons, military-style assault weapons. This is a big thing. It's a big step toward more gun control in this country. We were very happy to be able to do it. We had promised it in the election, and we delivered. But there are steps to come, as you know, to see how exactly it'll work, how the buyback program will work, what will be the measures in place, like grandfather clauses, if there are any. We will look at all different factors and speak with the different parties. We will also look at what's efficient as a system and what's reasonable as a system and what will protect most citizens. And these are discussions that we will have in Parliament with the different groups concerned by the situation, and we'll find the right answers for Canada. But should I understand then, you'll be talking with the opposition parties? Are you telling me that as a minority government, you're not sure to be able to keep at least one party to make the buyback mandatory? Or is it a matter of cost? Do you say there are too many in circulation and would cost too much for the government? That's already greatly in debt. I think there are a lot of factors to look at, but I don't think it's really a question of cost. The safety of Canadians is a priority. It's an absolute priority, and we'll do what's necessary. We're in a minority parliament situation, and so we must work with the other parties. And I know, in particular, the Bloc Québécois and the NDP have a perspective that aligns with ours. That is more gun control, and I'm confident that we can work together and collaborate to establish the right approach.
Important legislation on we brought forward important measures on banning the sale, the purchase, and the use of military-style assault weapons in this country. This is a significant step towards more gun control in this country, and a very important one. But there are many other steps to take, and there are many details to be worked out on exactly how the buyback program will work, whether and what sort of grandfathering there might be. These are things that we will be working on as we move forward towards legislation. We will have to work with other parties in the House, not just because we want to establish a strong consensus, but because in a minority parliament, it is necessary to get the support of other parties. And I know that both the Bloc Québécois and the NDP are very strong, aligned with us in wanting more and better gun control. And we're going to work together, and I'm sure we're going to be able to get the right balance for Canadians to keep people safe in their communities as we move forward.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Christian Noël de Radio-Canada. Le budget, c'est habituellement au mois de mars.
The budget is usually the beginning of March, and here we are in May. Do you intend to have a budget or an economic statement by June? Where are you at in your reflections? Is it necessary to have one? Well, first, at this time, we are investing and helping Canadians with billions of dollars because of this pandemic. And at each step of the way, in my press briefings, in what the ministers are saying and presenting every day at noon, we are transparent with what we're doing, what we see in the weeks to come, and what we're still working on. And we will continue to be open and transparent at every step. A budget in a normal situation is a prediction of what will come in the year to come and the measures we'll bring in the year to come. And honestly, in this period of uncertainty, extraordinary uncertainty on what could happen next month or in 3 months, we'll continue to try to be open and transparent with our measures and our predictions and plans for the economy in the future. We'll look for a way to share that, but we have not come to the point yet. We're still reflecting on the best way to look at either a budget, an economic statement, or some other way to share a little more with Canadians as to what we see for the months to come.
We have been extremely transparent with Canadians about the investments we're making in this unprecedented times, whether it's the billions of dollars in support for Canadian families across the country or measures that we're moving forward with to support small businesses. We have been announcing just about every single day, me here or ministers, what we're doing and sharing it with Canadians. A budget typically is an expression of what people can expect in the coming year, both in terms of how the economy is going to unfold, what sort of measures are going to be brought in. And in normal times, it's usually pretty accurate. Right now, we're in a situation where there is a tremendous degree of uncertainty as to what the economy could look like 6 months from now, what the economy could look like 3 months from now, what's going to happen in the coming weeks. So while we are continuing to be open and transparent, the reflections on at what point we might be able to present a budget or even just an economic update is ongoing. We will continue to keep everyone apprised of what we're doing and what we see coming, and we'll continue to look for ways to share with Canadians.
Ce que j'en comprends, c'est que dans votre esprit, on est encore en mode réactif et non pas en mode planification.
You're still in reaction rather than qualification. And would an economic update by June is completely excluded? I exclude absolutely nothing. I think it's important to give confidence to Canadians that we have a plan to react, to respond to this challenge. Indeed, since the beginning, we have been mainly reacting to the situation we find ourselves in because it's unprecedented, but at the same time, we're looking to plan the economic reopening and see how we can position Canada to get out of this in the best way possible. The investments that we made to support small business, to help workers, to ensure that workers keep their jobs, even if they stay home. These are all elements that aren't just a reaction, but also preparation vision for a reopening that could be very good for Canadians. But this reflection and this work continue, and we will always look at how we can ensure confidence among Canadians and information that the Canadians need.
With CTV National News. Prime Minister, I just want to go back to the question about potential financial aid for the airline sector. Air Canada posted a first quarter $1 billion loss, or in excess of $1 billion. I just want you to clarify in your answer. It seemed that are bailouts for affected industries that have been especially hard hit during this pandemic off the table? Is there any possibility outside of the programs you've already announced?
We moved forward very quickly on supports for workers through the Canada Emergency Response Benefit and through the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, which is being taken up by companies large and small across the country, including airlines who see this as a real way of making sure that when life starts to return to normal, they are able to get their employees back to work very quickly. This was the emergency priority that we had as a government to ensure that Canadians from coast to coast to coast would be okay to be able to stay at home, to be able to buy their groceries and support their families and pay their rents and do the things that would allow us to stay safe. But we recognize that companies large and small in various sectors across this country are particularly hard hit by COVID-19. I think of the airline industry, I think of the tourism sector, I think of the energy sector, and other significant sectors that will require more support on that. We will be looking at sectoral supports. We will be making announcements on that in the coming days or week. It is something we have to get right, but we will be looking at measures to ensure that some of our most important sectors for the Canadian economy continue to stay strong through this pandemic and mostly beyond it.
There's a great deal of concern from employees at the Cargill meat processing plant in High River, Alberta, that are going back to work now after the plant was shut down because of the death and multiple cases there for COVID-19. You said last week that your top priority is ensuring worker safety. These workers don't feel safe. What more can the federal government do in terms of inspecting food processing plants to ensure the utmost safety during this time?
We're working with provinces across the country to ensure that the supply chain for agriculture continues. And that worker safety is upheld. Though that is a provincial area of responsibility, but the federal government has a role to play as well, particularly around ensuring that there are adequate safeguards and PPEs in place. One will remember that the CFIB, Canadian Food Inspectors, are designed to inspect the food for safety, are ensuring that the way meat is handled, the way vegetables are processed is not putting Canadian safety at risk. The responsibility for the protection of the workers in that place is not the primary, or hasn't been the primary responsibility of the CFIB. That is much more for provincial labour codes. But we will, of course, be there to support the provinces in its work to ensure both the continued flow of supply chains for our food, but also the protection of workers who could be vulnerable right across the country. Okay. Le Canada
Canada is a country that is concerned with the safety and security of its citizens. The federal government is responsible for ensuring that food that is processed and prepared for Canadian consumption is safe and healthy, and it's the job of the federal agency responsible for that. It's not directly the responsibility of that federal agency to take care of the health of their workers. That's more of a provincial jurisdiction. But of course, the federal government will be there to help, to support, to participate where possible in the protection of workers in our food industry. We'll be there to work with the province to protect our supply chain as well as worker safety.
Global News. Prime Minister, a question about the Policing the Pandemic report, which shows $5.8 million in fines have been levied against Canadians for COVID-19 enforcement. How do you reconcile the support the federal government is providing to Canadians with the fact that other levels of government are handing out substantial amounts of fines?
I think it's extremely important that Canadians continue to behave as we have largely in social distancing, in staying home, in keeping ourselves, our loved ones, our families, our extended families, our seniors, our healthcare workers, and our essential workers safe from rapid spread of COVID-19. The federal supports that we've given to workers, to families, to students, to people right across the country have been so that people can stay home, so that they can engage in social distancing, so they do prevent further spread of COVID-19. And we are seeing over the past weeks that the curve is flattening and we are on a positive trajectory. We are not out of the woods, however, and it requires us to continue to remain attentive and vigilant in following the instructions set out by our public health officials. And that's why different jurisdictions have different, more specific rules suitable for their own jurisdictions, and that is also why they have taken it upon themselves as a responsibility to ensure that those rules be followed for the protection of all Canadians.
On sending your kids back to school, what specific protections would you want to see in place so that kids and teachers are safe?
I think obviously that's an area of provincial jurisdiction that I won't weigh in as Prime Minister, but as a parent, I can certainly say that looking at what sort of social distancing measures will be in place, what are the kids going to do at recess, what are the kids going to do at lunch, how many kids are going to be in a classroom, how my kids are going to be kept safe, are things that all parents are thinking about, and all parents will want to see that the school system, the province, the teachers are grappling with before we move forward in the next steps. And I know that there are an awful lot of people at all those different levels working on that right now.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. How do you feel about countries that aren't contributing to this global pledge but have in the past, and how the means to do so again?
I think this is a moment for people to come together and recognize that we all have ways of contributing to solving this problem. I think if it is a global pandemic, and what happens outside our borders, no matter how well we handle what's going on inside our borders, will have an impact on us directly with potential further spread of COVID-19 or indirectly with disrupted supply chains and a weakened global economy upon which we all depend. I think we need to look at doing our part. Certainly Canada has a long and storied tradition of stepping up as we mark the 75th anniversary of Canadians liberating the Netherlands tomorrow. We know that Canadians have always stepped up and will continue to step up because we recognize that our role within the world does matter. And I would encourage all countries to see that the only way we're going to get through this is if we get through this together.
On another matter, in Canada, women have been hit harder than men by COVID-19. And when you look at many sectors that employ women, such as the service industry, they are suffering right now. So I'm wondering, how can your government ensure women aren't set back by this virus?
I think a number of people have talked about the fact that this is a economic crisis that has hit our most vulnerable and most marginalized peoples the most. And women have been extremely hard hit in the service sector, in the home care sector, as well as a number of marginal and more challenged communities, whether it be new Canadians or whether it be young people. We need to make sure, and that's why as a government we've moved forward on protecting vulnerable people with the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, with extra help for charitable organizations and networks that are there to work for each other. One of the things that has been a real preoccupation for this government is when we tell people to stay home, to stay safe, and their home isn't safe, what do? The impact of domestic violence at a time of tremendous stress and anxiety for all of us in society that can exacerbate situations of domestic violence is something that we are deeply preoccupied with as a country and as a government. That's why we've made investments in shelters and in networks to support women fleeing domestic violence. And we will continue to recognize that this pandemic isn't hitting everyone equally, that the most vulnerable, as they so often are, more vulnerable. And that is why we have to do everything we can to support the people who need our help, including and especially women through this.
We recognize that a pandemic like this, a situation, a crisis, doesn't hit everybody equally. Women are extremely vulnerable because of the jobs their jobs are the first to disappear due to vulnerability and domestic violence situations. We know there's a lot more tension and stress in households across the country because of COVID-19, and what someone does when we tell them to stay home to be safe, but home is not safe. The reality of domestic violence hits very hard at this time, and this is why the government is investing in shelters and networks to help women and children who are in difficulty. We'll continue to fight conjugal violence as a priority for us, and it's a priority for all Canadians, and we'll continue to do all we can. Thank you.
All right. So